all the students and faculty members to settle down so that we can start our program. So in the beginning, I would like to just introduce our department in front of you. I will not take much time. Within 5 minutes, I will complete my presentation, and then I would like to call on stage our panelists and start. So the Department of Geography has been established in 2015 in Adamas University under the School of Basic and Applied Sciences. This is us before pandemic time. Presently, we are 10 faculty and staff members present in this department. We offer BSc Geography, MSc Geography, MSc Geopolitics, and PhD Geography. So we do not believe in only teaching. We do learning by doing. So we put great emphasis on the skill enhancement and, of course, continuous assessment rather than assessing them by one examination. This is an unique USP we can say about our department and the course curricula, that we offer compulsory internship. Students, whether they are in PG or UG, they have to complete 2 months of internship from any kind of research organization or private organization. And I'm very happy to say that consecutive 2 years, we have achieved 100% placements of our master degree students. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And we have the following laboratories, and recently we have developed a very high computational facility where ArcGIS, ATLAS Imaging, TMTMUs, all the required softwares are there. Not only that, we put a lot of emphasis on the field visits. So we have a good physical geography lab where we used to carry on the experiments for water quality testing, soil testing, and other physical surveys. Starting from flood prediction to weather forecasting, deforestations, climate change, urban heat island identification, aerosol concentration identification, are few of the research areas in which our students are presently working under the supervision of the faculty members. Yes, we do take the students for excursions. And we encourage a lot our students to participate and present their research works in various conferences outside Adamas University. We used to take our students to visit various institutes like River Research Institute, twice we have visited. We have visited also the remote sensing lab of ISAR. Apart from the regular field visits, also there are opportunities for small field visits in the nearby areas for this water quality analysis, air quality analysis throughout the year. So thank you. This is all about my department. And now I would like to start today's panel discussion. So I would like to call upon stage all the panelists one by one. So first I would like to call upon stage Dr. Shravanti Bhattacharya, who is from Anurup Chandra Mahavidyalaya. She is working as principal there. Ma'am, please take the seat. Dr. Bhattacharya has completed her PhD from University of Calcutta under the supervision of Professor Subhash Ranjan Basu. She has also received the NRTT CSSC postdoctoral fellowship at the Center for Studies in Social Sciences, Calcutta. She was an associate professor in the Department of Geography, Rani Villa Girls College prior joining to the Anurup Chandra Mahavidyalaya. She is an extremely efficient administrator, a good teacher, and a capable researcher. I am personally indebted to her because she has taught me the very basics of administration when I have started my career as a guest lecturer in Rani Villa Girls College. Okay. So next, I would like to call upon stage Dr. Shani Mukherjee. Ma'am. Shani Mukherjee ma'am is an associate professor in the Department of Geography in Ashutosh College, and he is also in charge of various administrative responsibilities in the college. As an alumni of Ashutosh College, it's my pleasure to have her in this panel discussion. She has not only taught many of us faculty members in our undergraduation days, but also taught many of our present students in Adamas University. She has received her PhD from Vishwabharati University and completed UGC minor research project on analysis of gender disparity in literacy and its reflection on social stratification. Presently, she is engaged in an ongoing project of the Department of Science and Technology and Biotechnology, Government of West Bengal, entitled Climate Change, Impact on Cropping and Related Changes in Nutritional Security in Farmhouses. I welcome you, ma'am. Now I would like to call upon stage Mrs. Anindita Ghosh, who is currently associated with Vidyasagar College as an associate professor in the Department of Geography. I welcome ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am. She has more than 30 years of teaching experience. She has started her journey as an assistant professor in the Bakura Sharadamani Mahila Mahavidyalaya in 1989. Her area of specialization is human geography, social and cultural geography. She has been appointed as head examiner of various courses at the University of Calcutta. In 2016, she has become an undergraduate BUS member for University of Calcutta. Now I would like to request Dr. Abira Dottoray, who is currently working as an assistant professor in the Department of Geography, Bakura Jela Sharadamani Mahavidyalaya. She was our ex-colleague at Adamas University. Her teaching experience is over 6 years and research experience is over 15 years. She was awarded her doctoral degree and MPhil degree from Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has worked as a research fellow in different departments of science and technology, Government of India, sponsored projects conducted by reputed institutes of the country, as well as various NGOs and environmental consultancies. She has quite a few publications in reputed books and journals and over a dozen of paper presentations at national and international conferences. I welcome Dr. Abira Dottoray to this department. Lastly, but not the least, I welcome Dr. Rajiv Sharkar, who is the Assistant Professor in the Department of Geography at Adamas University. Dr. Sharkar has joined Adamas University in 2017. Prior joining to Adamas University, he was a guest faculty and resource person at Jadavpur University, Kollam University, Diamond Harbour Women's University. Dr. Rajiv Sharkar is currently working on the applications of remote sensing and GIS in urban planning and management. He has also an interest in urban growth modeling and geostatistics. I welcome all of you to this panel discussion. Hello. Okay. So today's topic of panel discussion is the role of geographers in disaster management. We all understand, right, what disaster is? Do we? Do we understand what disaster is? A very small number of heads are nodding. So firstly, I would like to request Dr. Shani Mukherjee ma'am to kindly enlighten us about the basic concepts of hazard, disaster, prediction and management. Over to you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am has a small presentation for you.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Kosturi, and all the organizer for giving me this opportunity to interact with you people. What I would like to say in this today's brief discussion, that is about the role of geography in disaster management. And we all know that disaster marks the actually interface between the extreme physical event and the vulnerable population. So without population, there is no disaster. So to recognize a disaster, we must recognize these two elements, both the extreme physical process and also the vulnerability of the population. And geographer has actually has a long-standing interest on this matter, this research on vulnerability and hazard research, because actually it dates back to the thesis, pioneer thesis prepared by the Gilbert White in 1942 about the floodplain and floodplain hazard management. And he was also known as the pioneer modern geographer of floodplain management. So since then, the geographer, different eminent scholars and researchers has actually interpreted the actual causes and the root causes of disaster. So when we actually would like to recognize what is disaster, we must know that the risk elements of natural hazards actually depend on three factors. One is the hazard, which is a physical, extreme physical dangerous event, which actually is in physical origin. Secondly, the vulnerability. Vulnerability means the characteristic of the social community or the system, their susceptibility towards the physical, the negative effect of this physical hazards. And thirdly, another factor is the risk. The risk is the likelihood or the possibility of an area that actually will be negatively affected by the hazard. And all these elements actually we in geography has a very important with the three branches of geography, that is physical geography, human geography, GIS remote sensing. All these elements are actually incorporated. So as a geographer, we can identify the risk equation of a hazard. Nowadays we know that all the disasters are hazards, but all hazards are not disaster. Nowadays, very small event of hazards are turning into disaster because of this risk equation. Greater the risk, greater the possibility of the turning of a hazard into a disaster. So geographer can actually quantify, they have their ability, their knowledge can contribute to quantify this kind of risk equation. So risk equation can be quantified by threat, that is multiplied by vulnerability, that is multiplied by cost. But threat, what is threat? We know that threat is actually the frequency, the frequency actually with which a hazard can hit in an area. For example, in a mountainous area, the very, very threat is about the hazard of landslide or earthquake. Whereas vulnerability, as I have mentioned, the weakness of the area towards the particular hazard. For example, in the Himalayan area, earthquake, the area is much more vulnerable towards earthquake, not about towards the tsunami. And cost is the actual human factor. That involves the property, that lives, that is the most important factor. Where this risk is high enough, there is much more chance or possibility hazard can be converted into a disaster. So here lies the role of geographer as a disaster management, because we must admit that we cannot stop any disaster. What we can do to reduce or to minimize the impact of disaster by controlling that two factors. Trade we cannot control. Trade is out of control, but in case of it, we can reduce through a proper management, through a preparedness, to corrective measures, to preventive measure, we can minimize the effect of vulnerability and the effect of that is cost. So here is the role of geographer. So as Kasturi has given me 10 minutes of time, I will just, later the speakers will enhance various particular specific hazard or disaster. I will just give you some paper, some of the work which are actually are working in research in geography, the role of geographer in the disaster research. The first paper, it has been, it is done by Chakraborty and Mukherjee, Shubhapa Mukherjee. here in this paper, the geographer tries to assess the vulnerability regarding the flood vulnerability. And here the total area the block can be identified as a higher zone, very low zone, very medium zone. So through this kind of things, we can actually our preparedness can be dependent on the vulnerability. This same kind of work can be done for technical disaster, like for any kind of poisonous waste or removal of soil, harmful heavy metals pollution. This is another work which is actually it's dependent on simulation system. By using real-time data, here this work is done by the geographers. The heading of the paper is assessing the impact of Amphan cyclone. We all know the cyclone of Amphan and its impact in West Bengal with the multi-sensor approach. So with the GIS and related technologies, we can actually do this kind of work for pre-condition, pre-cyclone condition, post-cyclone condition. Again, we can also the geographers can also done this kind of work, that is pre-hazard condition and the post-disaster condition, how the damages has been made and how the recovery, reconstruction has been made. These two work are done on the islands of Philippines. Here the damage map, and one is the damage map, that is the post-pre-disaster and during the disaster map, and then the recovery, reconstruction, recovery map. So this kind of work can be done. This is another example what our scholars has done. That is in the Morakhi River Basin. We know that the down part of the Morakhi River Basin is very prone to vulnerable to flood susceptibility. We have done a flood susceptibility map, and with this flood susceptibility map, we identified the vulnerability factors, and with AHP method, we have finally done this kind of map. Where this is the final product, that is the flood risk index. That is this lower basin, the red part is the very high risk of there is a very probability of the very high risk. This bar graph is showing the very high zone, and the yellow portion, that is the upper basin area, that is having a very lower flood risk vulnerability. So this kind of thing can be done by the geographers, which can be very helpful for prediction and various corrective measures. So in conclusion, we can say that the geographers can contribute their knowledge about natural hazards and disaster. They can provide their input to formulate a holistic policy for the disaster management, minimizing its devastating evil. We must remember we cannot stop natural hazards, but we can reduce the vulnerability and the impact of disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I request ma'am to take your seat. I welcome our another panelist, Dr. Shukla Hajra, who is the principal of East Calcutta Girls College, Lake Town, Kolkata. And it is said that while she has joined East Calcutta Girls College as principal in 2005, the department was greatly strengthened in various academic activities. She is not only a good administrator but a renowned researcher as well. Yes, she has many publications to her credit. So I welcome you, ma'am. We have just started the discussion with the first speaker. Okay. So this was very comprehensive analysis that Dr. Mukherjee has given us about the role of geographers in minimizing the impacts of various types of hazard and disasters. Ma'am, you have mentioned about cyclones and floods. Probably cyclones and floods are those two disasters which are most frequent to us. We have seen, and you have also shown us that how Amphan has destroyed the Sundarban region, the Delta region. So, in this regard, I would like to come to Anindita ma'am. Ma'am, would you like to enlighten us about why we are facing so many cyclones, why the frequency of cyclones and storm surges have increased so much, and how in particular we can build resilience to the cyclones and storm surges.
Hello. Now, welcome to you all and a very good afternoon. Today I am going to discuss a much debated and discussed topic, the disasters caused by cyclones in the coastal areas of Sundarbans and the way the geographers can contribute in the system of disaster management. Now, we are all aware of the fact that the temperature of the earth is gradually on the rise, and its effect has been felt in the tropical areas of the world. And the number and frequency of the cyclones in the tropical areas of the world, the intensity of the cyclones have increased manifold. Now, the Bay of Bengal and the adjacent North Indian Ocean is not quite an exception. So, if we look into the entire situation, we will see that from the 90s of the last century, the number and intensity of the cyclones is continuously on the rise. And if we consider 2019, the years from 2019, we will see that as many as 9 cyclones have originated either in the Bay of Bengal or in the sea surrounding Peninsular India. And this number has increased to 20 in 2020 and again 20 in 2021. Now, if we consider the two seas, the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, we will see the intensity of the cyclones which originate in the Bay of Bengal is much higher than those originated in the Arabian Sea. Why? Because of the funnel-shaped nature of the ocean, because of the huge amount of sweet water which falls into the ocean, which falls into the sea by the and drained by the Ganges and the Brahmaputra river, and the higher sea surface temperature of Bay of Bengal. Now, if we consider the coastal regions, the eastern coastal region, Sundarban is the most vulnerable among the other districts of the coast. Why? Because Sundarban has frequency, can have a frequency of 1.5 to 1.7. That means after every 1.5 to 1.7, there is a chance of occurrence of a cyclone of very high intensity. Now, from 2019, as many as 4 very severe cyclones have hit Sundarbans. Fani in May 2019, Bulbul in November 2019, Amphan in May 2020, and Yash in May 2021. And on each occasion, the region has suffered damage because of gale winds, breached embankments leading to ingress of seawater. The cyclone Yash is an example of a cyclone which had its landfall in the coast of Orissa, about 200 kilometers southwest of the actual location of the Sundarbans, can have its effects on the island. Now, Yash was associated with the full moon, that means high tide, and the tidal surges together with storm surges inundated most of the islands of the Sundarban. And we find that many of the islands, Koramara, Moshuni, and Kumimari, were partially or completely submerged in the saline water of the sea. And many parts of Sakar Islands, which is one of the largest among the island groups, was partially submerged. The influx of saline water damaged the crops, making agricultural lands unfit for cultivation and created a severe shortage of drinking water. About 3 lakh houses in Hasnabad, Indrapur, Nakhal, Frizerganj,
fixed
and 24 Parganas were severely affected, and 134 embankments were breached during the storms. The effect of Amphan, which hit West Bengal and especially Kolkata, cannot be overrated, because the cyclonic made its landfall about 100 kilometers south of Kolkata, and northern South 24 Parganas in Kolkata were severely affected. Crops worth more than 100 crores were completely destroyed, and houses, properties, etc. were destroyed, and about 5 lakh people had to be relocated due to this cyclone.
আমি এক্সপোজ
Now, the effect of Fani and Bulbul was much less. Fani because it had its origin at landfall in Orissa, and then it turns northeastwards and further moving towards the coast of Bengal.
কি দেখছিল লাইভ করা খুব মুশকিল
Though the Sundarbans was affected with very areas of very high speed and storm surges,
পুরোটা তো সামনে হবে
disastrous effect was much
পেছন
less
সামনে এই
than
করতে
what
গেলে লাইটের
happened
কালে ওখানে একটা
in
লোক
the
বসে
case
থাকতো
of
এখান থেকে
the other two cyclones, that is Ampar or Yash. And in the case of Bulbul, it had its landfall near the Shahor Rapids, but here I have to mention the landfall took place amongst the forested areas of the Sundarbans, and these mangrove forests bore the brunt of the hazard, and therefore what happened, the actual people of the Sundarbans were very less affected. Now, after all this, let us speak about the disaster management and the resilience and the by which the inhabitants of the Sundarban face this disaster. The disaster management can be grouped into two parts: the short-term management and the long-term management. The short-term management includes weather forecasts, preparedness for impending damage caused by cyclones, such as evacuating the people from vulnerable islands, bringing the fishermen who are out in the sea to the safety of the mainlands, and leading the villagers to the nearby storm shelters. The rescue of stranded persons, supply of food, medicines, potable water to the affected areas, and clearance of damage were to be made at the quickest possible pace. All these things are included within the short-term management of the
নাহলে
disaster.
একটা ওই
And in this case, the geographers have a very important
একটা
role to
ছোট
play.
স্পট
Now, we have a
ছোট
very
তোদের ওই যে
important
মাথার
tool
উপর
in our
বান্ডলগুলো
hands.
লাগানো
These
আছে
are
ওরকম
maps.
একটা ছোট্ট
And with the
মাল নিয়ে
help of
এসে
GIS and
বড়
actual
স্ট্যান্ড
field
দিয়ে লাগিয়ে
visits,
রাখতে হবে
we can prepare maps with
এখানে শ্যাডো হয়ে যাবে
proper road locations,
এই মা
and
হচ্ছে কানা
these
মামা তো
can
আর
be handed over to the actual rescuers, and
আবার
they
নিচ
will
থেকে দিতে
find
হবে
their
উপরে থেকে
work
অনেক
much
নিচ থেকে দিতে
easier.
হবে
Now, we know about the sedimentology, about
সাইড
the
থেকে দুটো বড় বড়
processes
ক্যালোটিস
of
লাগিয়ে
the
দিতে হবে
delta
লাগিয়ে দেখি
formation,
লাগিয়েছিলাম
and
তো
thereby we can mark the
so they-
islands for which the islands which are more vulnerable
আমি
to
না
the
এটাকে বিষয়টা আর একটু বড় করে দিচ্ছি
And
সেটা
in this
ক্যামেরাকে
way,
মুভমেন্টই
we
করতে
can
হবে না
contribute
ওই
much
লোক
to
থাক
the
না
management
অসুবিধা নেই
তার মানে উনি
system
ফ্রি
of the
Yeah.
of disaster. Now,
বুঝলি
I'm
আর
sorry
একটু বড়
to
করে
say,
দিলে যেই বড় করে না এইগুলো লোকগুলো ছোট হয়ে যাবে
usually what happens
আরো দেখা যাবে
after the disaster occurs, say after a few weeks we completely forget about the
আপনি
disaster
ইউনিভার্সিটির
and
জিনিসপত্র
we
ঠিক
set out
করবেন
to do our
কোনটা
usual
ইউনিভার্সিটি
routine.
একটা ডিপার্টমেন্টের হেড
What suffers most?
এইগুলো
The
তো
long-term
আপনাদের আন্ডারে
management of the
এটা আমার
disaster.
আন্ডারে
হ্যাঁ
The long-term
এটা
management
অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেশনের আন্ডারে
includes
না না
the
আপনার
increase of
ডিপার্টমেন্ট
resilience of the people and the
বিষয় না
ability
বলার
to
সময় তো
fight the
লাগাম থাকে
disaster
না
in a more
পুরোটাই তো
suitable
আপনি
manner.
কাজ
And
করছেন
here,
এটা
the risk
হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু
factors and the
administration এর
vulnerabilities,
আপনি করাতে
which
পারছেন
my
না
previous speaker has spoken of.
আমাদের মালটাও তো আনাতে পারবেন না।
কোন মালটা
Now
আমাদের
here we
মালটা
see that
মালটার জন্য কি
the
করেছি শুনুন
Sundarbans, if we see that
চিঠি
they
গেছে
were covered
বলে
with thick mangrove forest about
আবার গিয়ে
100
বলেছি
to 200 years before
আবার গিয়ে বলেছি
before the present time.
কি করলেন
And it
ও
is
বলছে
a
এই সাইড
relation
দিয়ে দিন।
with the landlords
সার
and
দিয়ে
the
দেওয়া
landowners
নাহলে
who
কাল তো
started
দেবে
clearing the
এই
forest
তো আমার সাথে
and
ইন্দ্র
started
গেছিল
making the
ইন্দ্র
embankments
গেছিল
along the trees.
গিয়ে বলেছি
And these embankments actually
বলেছিল।
started destroying the vulnerable ecology of the Sundarban mangroves. Because when you build an embankment, you just prevent the and
ওরে কোন
pine
প্রোগ্রামে এসে বলতে
flooding
স্যার
of
ওটা
the
দিলেন
rivers
তো
by
আমার
the
একটা বলতে
floods.
স্যার ওটা
And
দিলেন
in
না
doing so, the
স্যারের সাথে আমার direct
siltation
কথা হয়নি।
of the
স্যারকে একদিন
islands
ডিসাইডটাই
has been
বলবো
stopped.
স্যার
And the delta
ওই সবার
building
টাকাগুলো
process has
চাইছিল
also been
কিন্তু
happening.
কিছু
সবাই
বলতে
টাকা চাইছিল
বলি সবার নামে দোষ দিয়ে বলবি
That
আমরা
in the
সবাই টাকা
upper
চাইছিল
reaches
আপনি
of the
বলেছেন
rivers,
সবার
we have
সামনে
built
আমাকে
in
সবাই
the
ধরছে
hydroelectric power
কে
stations.
কে
We
ধরছে আমি
have
বলে
built
দেবো তখন
irrigation networks, and in doing so, the amount of fresh water which is entering into the sea has very much reduced. So what
আমাদের
we
সবার
have in
মাইনে
the creeks
বেশি
are
ও
mainly saline.
ওই বলছিলাম আমরা হ্যাঁ
And in the process of
Someone like
building dams, what we are doing, building this advantage, we have reduced the
তখন তোকে বলবো না প্রায় দেওয়া যাবে না
capability of the
দেবে
creeks and the rivers to rejuvenate the
No,
delta
অসুবিধা
building
আছে না।
system. And in this way, we have made the islanders much more susceptible, much more vulnerable to these occurrences of floods. And in this
দিতে ওনাকে হবে
occasion, geographers have a very important role to play. Now, if we prepare maps from satellite images of the areas, say about 20 years discipline should come forward for this disaster
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
management. And the people, actually the
তুই
inhabitants of
তুই
the
যখন বসে
islands
কাজ
for whom
করিস
this
তখন দেখেন
thing
না
has been, the plans had to be made, should be made a party to the entire disaster management process. And in this case, I should say that we have come a long way in the case of disaster management. Now we have, especially in the case of short-term disaster management, as we have an excellent forecasting system, we can know the cyclones from the point of its origin and its way and everything. And so we have a long time, we have ample time to prepare ourselves from this disaster. And with this, I'm concluding.
Thank you, ma'am. It was a very enlightening lecture, I would say. You have talked about the problems of the Sundarban regions, very pertinent problem of the Sundarban regions, and of course, from starting from filing to Amphan years, we have seen how the prediction system has improved and how precisely IMD is able to predict the cyclone so that we can get much time for evacuation and all. But there are some disasters which we cannot predict. Can you name any? Yes. Yes, please. Yes, it's a man-made disaster. But I am saying about the natural disasters. Yes. Volcanic eruption is one of them which we cannot predict. Yes. Earthquake we cannot predict. We can only identify the zones which are very prone to earthquake. Yes. To some extent. Not always. Yes. Yeah. So it's a consequence of earthquake. So I would like to come to Dr. Roy that how we can build ourselves resilient to those disasters which are difficult to predict, like earthquake or volcanism. If you can
ওখানে আসবে,
enlighten
হ্যাঁ
us.
আপনি ওটাই ধরুন, ওটা ধরুন, আমি চেঞ্জ করতে পারবো না।
So I'll just come and show you some videos here. Now, I want to see who of you can please raise your hand staying flat.
Those who are ready to volunteer.
Who stays in flats in Kolkata? Okay. So you have a parking lot down. Okay. So be
My dear
very
little
alert
as
when
well,
there is earthquake here. First thing is you find an open space to go, because even Kolkata is really having dense building setup. And if you get out of your house, maybe the neighbor's house will fall. So there are high chances. Okay. So here I'll show you some of the earthquake resistant buildings and how earthquake propagates. This is in Japan, where the city was hit by a 7.1 Richter scale earthquake. And this is a huge skyscraper, like one you see in Esplanade, the 42. So 42 is also kind of small, you see. I'll just fast forward the video so that you can see that how it's working. See how tall the building is. And a few minutes later, you will see that it's fluttering in the wind. जैसे दुपट्टा उड़ता है ना, तो वैसे बिल्डिंग दिख रहा है. I just observe. Okay. Thank God it's not toppling down. The people there, maybe it's an office complex. There's high chance it's an office place, and people are not running out of this. But you should also be careful. I think there are awareness programs done in your schools and various educational institutes that when an earthquake strikes, either you move out of your place, out in an open space, or get underneath any table or bed where you can be secure. Now this is another video where you can see that the ground is moving up and down. And it's coming closer. Can you observe the minute difference? And there is liquefaction. So sometimes the groundwater, there's so much turmoil that it, not exactly capillary action, but it comes on the surface because of this. See, this is a pavement or a walking part in the park that is also moving. There are pipes underneath which also gets cracked because of the twisting and all that is going under the surface, and you'll see that water is coming out.
It's coming up through the sidewalk.
See here, the subsurface water may have come out, or there may have been a breakage in the supply by water.
I seriously thought I was sick first. I didn't know what was going on. I could just feel I was disoriented. Stepped over another crack. I wouldn't be surprised if the trains are not running anymore. I'm on the way to the train station. We've been a little late. Here's a huge crack.
Here also you see the cracks moving.
Still moving.
I really give a lot of credits to the cameraman. I don't know, I'm just run away from this. Filming this would be another thing.
So I could be kind of nervous.
This is in the mid-ocean during the tsunamis, where in the mid-ocean you do not actually feel the brunt of it. But mostly in the coastal areas. The clip next to this would be really scary. Now just see, this is the footpath and how it's sliding. This is also in Japan, 11th March 2011. Just watch the footpath and the pavement. People are running, they are still, civic here. We would have gone mad, I think. They would be chaos. All these kind of things. Just watch the gap between the pavement and the footpath, how it's sliding. So, when you see the seismic map of India, you will be really scared that even South 24 Parganas in the Sundarban regions are among the most vulnerable places. So I'll just switch on to the next slide. So how does these earthquake waves propagate? There are mainly 4 types. I think you have studied in your classes. Okay? Graduate students must be knowing. So they are the P wave, the primary wave, and the S waves. They are body waves. That means they pass to the interior of the earth, when the epicenter is located quite at a greater depth. They are not that devastating, but the surface waves, the Rayleigh wave and the love wave. The love waves move like a thumak thumak ke wala movement. So it's all love. So if you see the gyms, you can see how it propagates. So I'll ask 4 girls to come. I like Nari Shakti, so please volunteer yourself. I'll show you why and how these waves move, and why and what kind of feeling we do have as a result of these waves. 4 girls. I don't think yeah, please. I think I should, I can match my muscle power with yours. In a line. Now, what you have studied is P waves propagate through both solid and liquid. That means through the liquid mantle. But S waves cannot propagate. Why does it occur? So, why is it so? Have you ever thought? You must be memorizing. P wave to pass karta hai, now, why? So, we would like to see a demonstration. I would like to show you a demonstration why it happens. Now, in solids, you girls are atoms of the solid as well as the atoms of the liquids also. In solids, the atoms are very strongly bonded with each other. That's why the liquid is more lachila or flexible. Because the bond is not that strong. Now, who
ঘুম পেয়ে যাবে। 3:30 শেষ হবে না, 3:30 শেষ হবে না। নেক্সট আইটেমের গানা বাজনা চলে আসবে, শেষ হবে না। না ওরা বোঝাচ্ছেন যে কিভাবে ওয়েভটা হয়, আর্থকোয়েকের ওয়েভটা কি ধরনের হয়। প্লিজ, ও তো ইউটিউব খুলে বলবে এটা। রজত কিন্তু কালকে ব্র্যান্ড কমিউনিকেশনে ও নিজের ভ্যালুয়েবল মতামত দিয়েছে যে ফেসবুকের কি করতে হয় না দিয়েছে, দেখেছেন?
How do we put these things in practice? What should we know in if you're talking about how we can apply our knowledge in terms of to save people from the various casualties?
বলো।
If you see this map of India, you know how the Himalayas have originated. It's almost like sitting in a car
প্রোগ্রাম চলছে।
which has crashed into a pillar, like the accident of Lady Diana. Okay, how in the underpass her car crashed. India is almost like a car like that. The front part or the engine has crashed, so there is upliftment, and the dent is the Himalayan mountains. Okay? And we are sitting in the back seat. So the Himalayan people, where you can see the red zone.
তুমি বিএসএনএল সিম
This
নিয়ে কি
here,
বলছো?
the red zone. Can you see the cursor? I don't think. The red zone and the pink zone. There's zone 5 and 4, which is the most vulnerable, most prone to earthquakes.
পেয়েছো?
And here, the maximum density of houses are there. The maximum people are living. And they are living in what kind of houses? They are living in houses that are not structurally properly engineered
ঠিক আছে,
to resist
তাহলে
the
কালকে
earthquake that can happen here. And we are like sitting in the back seat without no safety net, without not putting our seat belts
Achha.
on. So we should be ready for any kind of jolts any day and we, die as well.
আচ্ছা,
So I'll just quickly wrap up because I have other speakers next to it. So what kind of houses we should be staying in? We see that there is a high correlation between the people dying from collapse of houses rather than just the earthquake. So if you are staying in a flat like this, which has car parking and no shields, there are high chances that your house may fall like a pack of cards. And there's an example how this flat
টাকা জমা
falls.
পড়েছে দেখেছি,
So what
1000 টাকা
it
জমা।
says, the NIDM and NDMA, the National Disaster Management
61.
Authority and National Institute of Disaster
61.
Management. These two institutes are the pioneer and apex institute in terms of disaster management, policy making, manuals, etc. in India. And researcher, if you
না
become a
আমি বাইরে
researcher
খাবার
or
খাচ্ছি
you
না,
want to
আমি
fetch a
বাড়িতে-
job,
বাড়িতে-
after
আজকে
a course
বলিনি
in
আমাকে।
geography, there are high chances you can get absorbed here. So here, all the buildings and structures that pose risk to loss of life are to be identified. Here, where the geographer's role comes into play. So here, there is a publication, and the person I have marked, he's from Department of Geography, from a university in England, Bristol. And if he can tie up with civil engineers, other two authors of this paper are civil engineers, and we have Shatra sir also, he's from civil engineering background. So he's in geography, you can tie up and do vulnerability mapping in your area. You go to home, you ask your parents, have you thought, mummy, papa, whatever, or your, parents or guardian who is there,
রাখছি।
you can ask that, have you checked your building plan? Have you seen that they are properly retrofitted?
ঠিক আছে
Are they prone to earthquakes? You can go and ask them to show you the plan, ask the promoter or the
ঠিক আছে
builder. Generally what we do, we get a contractor, some thekewala, and ask them to put bricks and cement and we get our homes done, but we do not know whether it is earthquake resistant or not. So we can definitely do the mapping by learning few things. I just quickly slide through what we can do is the following things. You can identify whether the building is prone to earthquakes or not. You can check the brittle columns, whether the column, the bars or the pillars in your building have cracks or not. Mainly during earthquakes, the cracks will develop along the corners of the window or the doors. Then you can check whether there is proportionate or not.
পরেরটায়
Whether
পারবো না আমি
the ground floor and the top floor, they are proportionate or not in terms of height. Then you can check the shape of the floor plans. Generally, if you have a square floor, like the floor here, it will be more earthquake resistant. If you have hexagonal and all those kinds of fancy flooring shapes, they are highly prone to earthquakes. Then whether the slabs are on the column, they are without the beams are properly installed. The higher the more the number of stories, the more likely it is to topple off. The type of foundation you have, all these various things, I'll just quickly go through. So these things you can go check and plan. And these are certain things that you can check or these are installed nowadays in order to protect a building or a high rise from earthquakes. There are rubber shielding which absorbs the first figure on the left. There is a rubber shielding at the column which absorbs the seismic waves and does not let your building topple off. That's why you were seeing that the high rise in the Japan that was swinging. So this is what was happening. Then often you cannot, once a building is set up, you cannot break it down and again construct a new one. It will be very costly. So one can do is surround the building with large number of rings. That is how archaeological and historical monuments are preserved. There are tuned dampers. So this kind of the third one down below, oil fillers are there, and when they act as like shock absorber. So they are fitted into the building. Then you have various other kinds of pendulums, like here in air controlled traffic in the airport, the towers that are there, they have this huge heavy ball kind of thing. The right one, second right one. So they kind of balances the seismic waves. So these are the ways in which we can check whether, or you can, before you guys, when you grow up and you have your own buildings, you can at least ensure that your building is earthquake proof. And there are some other retrofittings that you can do. There are some pictures of it, that the pillars are properly installed, they are clipped together, and there are various bars and all those things. I'm not going into the details. If your building is earthquake prone or has developed cracks, so you can call a registered engineer or civil engineer who has this architectural knowledge, and they can get it repaired. So thank you and all the best for your future.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a very maybe you have enjoyed the activity, but what madam has tried to say, it's not very funny. It's very scary for us. So I would now like to come to Dr. Bhattacharya, that how vulnerable are we who are living in the urban areas? Ma'am has shown us that the building structures and the techniques by which they have been made, it should be earthquake proof. But are we safe from the other disasters, or we can only scare for this earthquake?
Thank you, Kosturi. At the onset, I would like to thank the Department of Geography, Adamas University, all the faculty members, and especially Dr. Shani Mukherjee for inviting me to this Geo Connect program and this panel discussion. It is wonderful to be here in this beautiful university. Now, I'm enjoying the panel discussion that has been going on, and all the three speakers who spoke before me have told us about various aspects of the disaster the cyclone disaster, we have heard about the earthquakes. But most of us, the city dwellers, we have a common notion that disasters are mainly concentrated or affect the poor living in the rural pockets of the world. But at present, we all know that half of the world's population is living in urban areas, and the urban areas, especially in the developing nations, in these areas, the vulnerability to disasters is increasing because of various reasons like unplanned expansion of cities, growth of population, the incompetence of urban local bodies, and inappropriate land use plannings. So cities are vulnerable. Now when I say cities are vulnerable, what kind of disasters can we have in a city? Well, many kinds of disasters can affect the city and its dwellers. It can be natural disasters like floods, when we call it urban floods. It can be cyclones, it can be urban fires. And there are disasters like the pandemics, which can hit the population of a city, and it spreads faster in a city because of the close proximity in which city dwellers live to each other. And there can be other man-made disasters like structural collapses and heat island effects. All these things happen in a city. Now, in a city, the disasters, when they happen, there are a combination of two factors that act. One is the location and exposure of the city to the various disasters, and the other factor that increases the vulnerability is due to the poor local governance, environmental degradation, and overstretching of the resources in a city. Now, when these two factors come together and a major disaster hits, so there is a risk, and the disaster hits a particular city, so there is risk accumulation, and we see a resultant destruction of life and property in a particular city. Globally, this response to disaster or the study of disaster has taken a paradigm shift. We have seen that in all the major developed nations, the study of disaster management has moved to risk reduction. We are moving towards risk reduction, but our policy, to a great extent, still, or what we see, we are working on it. It is more on response post-disaster. That is where we, because Aurindita also spoke about that response is very good, but long-term rehabilitation, etc., is where we are still lacking behind, and that is because risk reduction planning is not up to the mark. And it is here that the geographers can come in. We can work on risk reduction of a particular area through various actions. And if we can do this, then we can lead to risk capacity building, social mobilization, advocacy, and awareness. Now, since the time is limited, I will not go into the detail of each of these, but I will just touch on certain small areas where we can work to get or to reduce the risk in a city. For example, we can first start with the risk mapping. With the physical data that is available to us, we can map the various parts of the city and see which are the areas or which are the cities which are prone to which kind of disasters, and try to match that physical data with the socioeconomic characteristics, the physical infrastructure of the city, to get an idea of the risk of various parts of the city. After this, we geographers can help in micro-zoning. Even within a city, different areas can be susceptible to different kinds of response. There can be a wetland area, a low-lying area, or an area which is a little, which is not near to some water bodies. So in this way, if we can identify our micro-zone the areas and then plan our response, then when a disaster actually strikes, then our response will be more effective to control the problems. Then we have the presentation that Abira gave was mainly, she showed a few buildings of Japan. We all know that Japan has gone way ahead of the other countries in terms of earthquake response. People are so used to it and the buildings are built in such a way, the way she showed, but in all parts of the world, in all urban areas, that is not the case. Our buildings are many years old, hundreds of years old. Those which are being done today are also at times not built keeping in mind these kind of disasters. So here comes the question of retrofitting. Retrofitting means when we already have a structure, but we try to make it earthquake resistant by adding to it some structures to it so that it can withstand the pressure of an earthquake or similar disaster. Now, we will not retrofit a building. The structural engineers will do that. The geographers will not do that. But what can a geographer do? A geographer can identify the areas where the buildings must be retrofitted because of the hazard that it is posing. Another very important thing is updating of building codes. If we work according to the suggestions of the microzoning and the risk mapping provided by the geographers, the urban local bodies, they can work on these suggestions and upgrade the building codes. Because we build a building, then we retrofit it, that is not the way to go about. If we update our building codes, knowing our vulnerability
পরের
to a
প্রোগ্রামটাতে আস্তে
disaster,
আস্তে বলছে
then
ক্যামেরা
if
থাকবে তো
our
ক্যামেরা
building
রেকর্ডিং
codes
হবে
are such,
না
because
সমাজের সাথে
whenever we build a building, we need clearance from the municipality or whoever the local body is. So if the building codes are in place and if they are updated accordingly, according to the requirement of that urban
না
area,
না আমি ওই কাজটা
then
এগোতে
our
হবে না
buildings
শুরু করতে
will
না
be
হলে
safer, life
3
will
দিন
be
সোমবার
safer,
দিন
property will
সোমবার
be
দিন ওটা
safer.
ছাড়তে হবে আমাকে পুরো বাড়িতে কাজ
And
জমা দিয়ে
lastly, we can innovate insurance mechanism. You know, poor people living in urban areas, they cannot think of a disaster in advance and pay for insurance so that if a disaster hits,
ওখানে
they
তো
will
লোক
get the money from
সমস্ত
the
দাস নেই কেউ
insurance.
নেই
But if
ছুটিতে
there is a mechanism where we
গ্রীষ্মের
can,
ছুটিতে আছে
where the authorities are
ওখানে যে লোক
made
আছে
to
আমি ভাবলেন কি
understand
করে
group insurances about
ওখানে তো
disasters
দেখা ইপসিতা
for
আমাকে
a
দেখেছি
group of vulnerable
বাবা
people,
লাগছে
so that when a disaster
সুন্দরনগর
hits,
ফাঁকা
it is
ভেতরে
not
ঘরে ঢুকে
only the
দেখি
government
আছে
who will help in
অর্ণব নিঘাত আছে
resettlement and revival of the lives. There will be support from the insurance also. This insurance mechanism and its spread, especially to the poor population of any urban area, can work a long way in controlling the hazard and reduce the risk. So this is the way geographers can have a very, very important role to play when we are talking of hazards in an urban area. I'll end what I'm trying to say with a small example. I will take you back to the year 2015. It's a very significant year in terms of earthquake. In this year, two very big earthquakes happened on two corners of the earth. One of which you must all be aware of was the Kathmandu Earthquake, which happened in Nepal. It was of 7.8 in the Richter scale, and it originated at a depth of 15 kilometers below the surface. Kathmandu was completely ill-prepared for this earthquake, and as a result, 9,000 people died in Kathmandu and its surroundings, and a total of $10 billion of economic assets were lost. This was in April 2015.
In the year 2015, in September, in Chile, in the city of Illapel, another earthquake hit. It was even more massive. It was 8.3 in the Richter scale, originating 20 kilometers below the Earth's surface. What was the loss? 14 people died, only 14. And economic asset loss was also very, very low. Why did this happen? Because South America, Chile especially, with its long history of earthquakes, have learned the lesson the hard way. They have worked on their risk reduction approach. As a result, they have mitigated this in the last few decades through rigorous building codes, evacuation systems, and investment in preparation and insurances, so that when a disaster hits, we cannot stop most of the disasters. But when a disaster hits, we are prepared. Our risks are reduced. It is not just response, it is preparedness that will help us to fight the disasters in a much resilient manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting us constantly, and thankful to all the speakers. Now we have almost come to the end of this panel discussions, and I know that students of the schools, they have bus, they need to go. So I would like to quickly ask to Dr. Shukla Hajra that after listening to all these kinds of hazard and disasters, urban flooding, cyclones, earthquakes, what should be our call on overall preparedness? If ma'am you can enlighten us, but we do not have much time, we are running out of time. So ma'am, if you can briefly enlighten us.
Yes, please. It is the end of this session, and first I thanks to Adams University organizers and also all speakers. They almost cover everything, every corners of preparedness of this disaster. I just want to say few lines at this end about the mapping. So it is an important tool of the geographers for helping the people who are in the disaster conditions. The people who are from NMDA. So NMDA people, they when they arrive, they need a map. So people, we know about the zoning of the disasters prone area for the volcanic activity, for landslides, for floods, for cyclone, etc. But we need a very large scale map of those areas for reaching the people who will rescue those disaster prone people. So the map of the roads, map of the rescue center, where are the rescue center, where the emergency people rescued them and put them in the center. And also the most important thing is the training of the people for their participation, because the local people, they only do a lot through their participation. So participation, we know about the early warning. Now we are getting the early warning of climatic conditions. But there are sometimes in some places in Japan, I saw that there are some measures for prediction of seismic activity and other things, landslides. There are many models for the predictions. But even though my previous speaker, which she mentioned about the coding of the building, not only the coding of the building, but also the coding of the land use change. The land use change make the vulnerable. So vulnerability measurement is necessary, and it should be in a map which one is more vulnerable, and that should be coded. So people can get an idea about the coding, about the conditions, and they can reach there, and the roads and the ways also road mapping help them. So the basic mapping things, we are getting the information from Survey of India to Kushits, and now we are using satellite maps. Now we are using drone maps. So with the help of those maps, we will make a good information database for the people to go there and to help them. I know that the people, the whole day you are with the people who are who are discussing a lot of this disaster management. My most important the focus thing is that when if we prepare ourselves regarding our house quality, regarding the climatic conditions, regarding the vulnerability of the seismic waves, the more we prepare ourselves, the less the loss of life and property. So I conclude this with thanks of everybody, to the speakers, my colleague speakers, and the listeners who are here and give patience to hear our talks. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And there comes the roles of cartographers and the role of geoinformatics for mapping and identifying those vulnerable places. So now at the end, I would like to come to Dr. Rajiv Sharkar that yes, we have understood that how much loss, how much life loss is happening when we are ill prepared. Like people are dying. So what happens to their family? What about the psychological impact? How we can calculate the psychological impact? We all are aware about the economic losses and the loss of life, the quantified thing. What about those things, feelings, mental trauma that we cannot quantify? Over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. The point is that we have talked about a disaster from the context of structural aspects. Now, even if we have a good plan, nature has the capacity to make it upside down. And in that case, we will have losses of life and losses of infrastructure. Now, what happens is that nowadays, geographers do play a role in the context of nature-based solution. So we, all of us have gone through a disaster called COVID. So if you look into that, we have lost our many relatives. We have lost many friends of us. Now, if you sense that part, in that particular environment, we have started to feel for nature more. Now, here is the point that we need to look into the nature. So, even if we are in trauma, in isolation, we started to focus on gardening. We started to focus on planting trees in our kitchen gardens. So that is how we have a genetic code imbibed in us for carving for nature. That is called the biophilic philosophy, love for life. So as a geographer, we need to put that context more into the system that will help the decision makers to consider nature-oriented development, which will help the environment to sustain even if we have disaster of any kind, which will help the psychological trauma to be reduced, anxiety to be reduced. Another disease called PTSD, stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, that also can be reduced through the biophilic system. So that is where the geographers can play a good role. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to all the speakers. That was very comprehensive, enlightening discussions that we have. Many students couldn't stay with us till the end because of the buses. So now I would like to call upon stage Professor Parthu Vasu, who is senior professor of our department. So if you can come once to the stage. I would like to give a small token of appreciation to all the panelists for the wonderful session we had. Sir, please come here. Ashmita. I would like to request Dr. Shravanti Bhattacharya to come in the front. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Please have a seat. I would like to request Dr. Shani Mukherjee to come in front of the stage. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Please have a seat. I would like to request Anindita ma'am, please to come in front of the stage. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to request Dr. Shukla Hazra to come in front of the stage. Ma'am, please have your seat. I would like to request Dr. Abida Dattalai to come forward. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. And lastly, I would like to ask Dr. Rajiv Sharkar to come in front of the stage. Thank you to all the panelists and also. Okay. Just for 5 minutes, I would also like to request you to be seated because we are going to announce the winners of various events, and I would like to request you to hand over the gift, the prize to those winners. So, can I have Dr. Tuhim Bhattu on stage?
গুরুত্ব তিনটে মিস করে যাবে তুমি।
হ্যালো,
এই দিন কুড়ি আমি দিন
for debate competition, the first prize won by Shakuni Dutta, Adamus World School. Oishika Nap, St. Augustine's Day School.
Congratulations, Oishika. Please come on the stage. I request Dr. Shravanti Bhattacharya to kindly hand over the certificate and the prize money to Oishika. Many congratulations to you and your school.
Mondita Dutta, Presidency University.
আমার দিতে হবে ওখানে দাঁড়িয়ে থাকুন
কোথায়
আমার নেই
ও দাও আমার তো ওখানে
I
ফ্রেন্ডও
would
আছে
like to request Dr. Shani Mukherjee ma'am to hand over this prize to Mondita.
কোথায় বার করে দিচ্ছি
দাঁড়ান ঠিক আছে ছেড়ে দিন
Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Next for Mapathon, this mathematics competition, Omkita Vishwas, Adamus World School.
I think she has left. We can send her.
Gaurav Vishwas, Adamus World School.
দাঁড়িয়েছে তো বাদিকে
Is there?
And another special category, offline digital mathemaking, Shinchon Banerjee, Adamus University.
Many congratulations, Shinchan. I would like to request Anindita Ghosh ma'am to kindly hand over the prize to
This
Shinchan.
certificate is due to
কোথায় দাঁড়াবো সর্বনাশ করেছি
না ঠিক আছে
সেন্টার ওটা তো দাঁড়িয়ে গেছিল এখানটা থেকে
Next category, poster making offline, Rohit Third, NCP Umashashi High School.
Many congratulations for him. I I sincerely thank all the faculty members of different schools who have come and constantly stayed with your students, with the students and with us. I request Shukla ma'am, please to come forward and hand over the floor.
Jointly Devogriya Shenmukto, NCP Umashashi High School.
ওখানে নজর তো বাজবে
চালিয়ে চলে এখান থেকে এখানে কিন্তু
In
লাইভ
which
করা
class
যাবে না
you are?
তাহলে হেভি খুশি
না না ওখানে
সব স্কুলে ডিনার থাকবে এটা তো বড় প্রোগ্রাম
থাকবে না
হ্যাঁ
কিংবা আমাদের ডিন থাকবে মিটিং ডেকেছে
না টিম দিয়ে এখানে আসবে রবীন্দ্র ওখানে সব থাকবে রেজিস্টার থাকবে এত বড় এই লাইফটা তো ছোট হয়েছে অ্যাকচুয়ালি যেটা হতে যাচ্ছে সেটা তো বড় বিষয়
Many congratulations to Umashashi School.
Next category, model making competition offline. And the winners are Shumon Shorkar, Kushum Shahaji, Mohana Shorkar and Orko Murmu from
Welcome.
Vinalini
And
Rajyo.
many congratulations. You have made a very scientific technical model. And I would like to request Dr. Abhira Dottoray please to come forward and to give the prize.
তো কোথায় চলে যাচ্ছে গানটা
না না অনেক কজন আছে একসাথে দান করিয়ে দেবে সব কজনকে চারজন আছে আমার বড় করে ধরা আছে কোনো জান নেই
That's outside. You all can see the model. Model is very nice. Very beautiful.
সৌম্য লিখেছিল সব টেকনিক্যাল ফ্যাকাল্টিদের জয়েন করার জন্য সৌম্য যে ছুটি নিয়ে বসে আছে মানে একাডেমিক ছুটিতে চলে গেছে লিভে আমার নামের পাশে একাডেমি লিভ আছে
আচ্ছা আপনি আর যাচ্ছেন না কেন
আমি কিন্তু এতে দেখেছি টিসিস
হ্যাঁ?
আমি দেখেছি টিসিস আমার নামের পাশে একাডেমি লিভ আছে
চলে আমি
Okay, we have completed our prize distribution ceremony session. I request all the participants to just
এটাকে লাইক করতে
go out of the auditorium. We'll have a group photo. We'll say that
দিনের
for
program
the
আছে
school as well.
3:30
And
থেকে
I
জানো
also request to all the
দিনের নিউ
faculty
স্টুডেন্টদের
to
সাথে প্রোগ্রাম আছে
for a group photo outside this
কোনো
room.
ডিনার থাকবে আরে রেজিস্টার হয়েছে প্রবিসি হয়েছে এটা জাতা ব্যাপার
4:40 ওই জন্য তো 4:40
Thank
বলেছে
you everyone.
এটা
I
5:30 অবধি চলবে,
sincerely
খবর নিয়ে
thank our IT team and the media team who is constantly effortlessly helping us for making this program a grand success. I thank all of them. I thank all of the students, teachers and the panelists. Thank you all.
বন্ধ করলাম